Alright, Webbot report. I got about 45 minutes before I need to go somewhere after work. So, new Webbot report. He's got what I'll use for layman terms is a new formula that the Webbot works off of. Reprogramming of the Webbot, etc. So restated for clarity, what has been done is to produce a report based on a new time scale imposed on the data stream. Based on some early and few experiments, it seems worth a shot. Given the new temporal spread range that was set to the bottom supporting layer of the temporal pyramid, it will take until November to get an accurate, from our perspective of the datasets, assay of the results, though we humans should see it begin to fail or succeed in its forecasts by midsummer northern hemisphere. So either this new formula that he's put together for the Webbot to operate under should have telltale signs by summertime if this is going to be accurate or not. Now, as being a follower of the Webbot for so long, I still don't know. All this stuff is basically 2012 and a little bit of 2013 time frame. Being a long follower of the Webbot, I've got to say, so many times I've seen stuff happen a year later, even 2 years later, but it happened nonetheless. Some other things were absolutely spot on, such as the earthquake in Sumatra, Indonesia, the re-entry of the space shuttle that blew up in the sky, right on the date that they said it would. Some of that, I guess what led him there in the past to get that information, that data set, he kind of focused on with this data set, I guess, and I may not be describing that right, but the long story short is he's going to see if we get better results, so to speak, out of this one, this new restructuring of the Webbot, or whatever you want to call it. Further problems in report preparation have included intrusions on our processes by outside parties. We have reason to think this is solved, at least at this stage. Meaning, someone trying to throw a monkey wrench, you probably know who someone might be, government, throw a monkey wrench into his processing of data. He thinks he's got that squared away. The data sets are pointing toward a very energetic, in all senses of the word, summer and fall for humanity and our solar system. Many forecasters are focusing on the just past, as of this posting, solar eclipse. So many forecasters are focusing on the solar eclipse that just happened and the imminent Venus transit of the sun in early June. In our data, while these periods are significant, they pale in comparison to the energetic levels of activity in July, August, and September. This is repetitiously true in all our data sets. No sooner would model space be progressed into July and seemingly all hell breaks loose. And this is on top of an increased chaos level of May and June. And naturally, we're almost out of May, and keep in mind, he's writing this up to probably a month ago when he started. So he's saying, as he said, as I'm writing this, basically we're experiencing the solar eclipse, you know. Look at what's already happened with JP Morgan, Europe again, Greece is worse, Spain is now worse. We had bank runs in Greece, Spain, and the UK the other day based off of a Spanish bank that was in the UK, as far as the UK bank run is concerned. I mean, there's no good news anytime recently here. The stock market itself, including commodities and everything else, getting hit pretty hard. This one's titled The Powers That Be Entity Data Set. What are the dirty, rotten bastards, powers that be, going to try to pull over on us this summer, Northern Hemisphere? As model space has progressed over June and into summer, Northern Hemisphere 2012, the data set for the powers that be has growth patterns under a very powerful archetype, innocence. That's the key word, innocence. The growth in this set is indicating that the powers that be will be claiming innocence against charges. The charges are indicated to come from underlings, minions, officialdom workers. This claim against the powers that be will be first seen by the aware observer as rapid promotions are suddenly made public. So this claim against the powers that be will be first seen by the aware observer as rapid promotions are suddenly made public. Some press or pundits will be characterizing these as mysterious. These rapid promotions will be but the first symptom or indicator of the internal breakdown of the binding between the elite's social contract. In other words, there's going to start to be some whistleblowers within their own ranks. And the powers that be response to the whistleblowers or minions within their ranks. Minions by meaning, people like Rahm Emanuel become mayor, become the chief of staff of Obama, or maybe a governor over here, or high-powered position Congress player over here, treasury person, CFTC person, just someone like that as a minion. And they will be promoted to a much better paying job. Just shut your damn mouth and we'll promote you. Okay, sounds good. But this internal strife will also be very visible, or not very, but will be visible to the aware observer in the sheer speed or rapidity with which documents appear when called for by national celebrity propagandists. Further, associated with the promotions are indicators that these are spurious and that the recipients of the sudden upward change in status, the ones who got the promotion, will not actually gain the promised promotion. Rather, the data suggests that wealth visible to the newly bribed recipients will be denied by circumstances. Sorry about that. We thought we were promoting you. We changed our mind. That are being described in the data as rolling over or barreling over. Additional note, hint from universe here, barreling the participants in this particular bribery episode on the planetary side. Next thing, global pop entity plus powers that be plus population of USA, also known as the populous US of A entity, and terra entities data sets are somewhat covered over what I'm about to read. The longer term data sets have the Fukushima cited under the archetype of sound, which is also vibration and resonance, as well as energy at this level within our lexicon, which is just a word for talking about their data set. The primary supporting set is headed by breaking movement. Breaking movement. Got a news story here that's tied to Fukushima that just came out today. Couldn't have possibly been out when the Redbot talked about this. But let me just finish this. The primary supporting set is headed by breaking movement. This set of breaking movement also contains thunder, explosive release of sound, sound and fury, signifying fury, and others to that same effect. The data set continues to provide growth under dangerous position. In this instance, this is relative to nuclear plants in general, and Fukushima specifically returns in the data here, directly held as well as by crosslink. The data sets at the detail level within the primary supporting data set suggest that a visible incident is just ahead, perhaps by the end of summer 2012, he's not sure, in which a man standing on a crag / precipice / broken wall will lean or hang by one arm over the most dangerous viewpoint or point of perception relative to the Fukushima nuclear plant disaster. His fate is described within the data sets multiple times, a precariously perched, looking down upon personal destruction. It is difficult to view this data set and not take it as the whole of humanity stares down at our destruction, based for the same reason. Nuclear plant problems, nuclear spilling out like Fukushima, etc. Within the top level for the Fukushima ongoing nuclear disaster are repeated supporting layers that reinforce the idea of a loud noise that is heard but not seen and is felt in the hairs for 100 miles around. Note that there are supporting sets also showing that loud noise is affecting ships of many countries for days. There are repeated references to summer, Northern Hemisphere in 2012 within the dataset. There are repeated references to startlement and sudden fright and nervous worry / response within this set at several key levels of the archetype. The The startlement/shock word sets are in their turn affecting directly and by crosslink the sets or data sets for authorities and pan-global. This last is a dually modifying set, so the interpretation is for a global fear fest or freakout involving the pan-global authorities. This data set, by the way, contains references to a flight to safety, which will be directed south of the equator. This data set contains specific references to a ring of 540 miles, presumably around Fukushima power plant, assuming, that will be declared to be no life and all must move. Further, the supporting sets go to the idea that everything, regionally, nationally, and slightly less so globally, is in a furor of turmoil/chaos/upset. These sets do include shorter term values that are very long range. Additional note, new extended range that show some clans or groups and individuals who will be adjusting to the relocation by the end of this year. Again, what if it's next year? This webbot is not perfect. Just keep in mind what I'm talking about, not so much the exact date it's trying to give you. Having said that, let me finish with this last sentence. Further data sets go to the impact of radiation on the fishes at a planet-wide level. Thinking about eating seafood in the near future might not be a good idea. Archetypal meanings going to religion that cross-link over to the powers that be entity and the populous US of A entity, and entity is a data set, are indicating that the first flush of outrage and shock, again also a keyword within the Fukushima subset, that are indicated to propel a storm of popular anger directed at religious institutions. The terminating links within the populous US of A entity have descriptor sets for crowd-based, mob-caused burning of religious buildings. This aspect of the phenomena is more limited to the Christian cults, and that's a keyword, Christian cults. Those descriptors for both Judaism and Islam indicate that a wave of abandonment and atonement will overtake rabbinical culture. Additional note, lots of linguistics here swirling around disgust and revulsion associated with dedication to space alien/off-world god pretenders. While in Islam, the response is shown as being split between a rabid reform movement and large-scale abandonment. It was this period, mid-2012 July, that was forecast to be the visible threshold of the abandonment of the faith-based religions movement. So perhaps it will start then. Back to Fukushima and how evacuation and this kind of language of the Webbot report, and we have this. Chris Canine, who has 15 years experience as a health physics technician, chemist, and radiation safety instructor, told Energy News that if number 4 reactor fuel pool at Fukushima collapses, Japan will be evacuated. Really? This was done basically a month ago, and he had to interpret it. It was done long before a month ago, but he started interpreting it a month ago. And first sentence, if number 4 reactor fuel pool at Fukushima collapses, Japan will be evacuated. What's the chances of that? He did not elaborate on how such a logistical nightmare might be accomplished. Chris worked at Fukushima in the late 1970s and has also worked at over 20 nuclear plants in the USA, Japan, and Mexico. He wrote that there are several reasons why I believe the country will be evacuated if the number 4 SFP collapses. And I assume that SFP is spent fuel pool. The amount of radioactive material in the fuel pool dwarfs the total amount at Chernobyl by a factor of 5 to 10 times. Chernobyl's core was still mostly contained in a building, although heavily damaged, and most of the radioactive material melted downward and became lava-like. If number 4 spent fuel pool collapses, it will be lying on the completely open ground, probably going critical on and off in portions of the pile for years. The dose rate from this pile will make dropping sand or anything from the air much more lethal than anything at Chernobyl, and probably impossible. The entire site at Fukushima will be uninhabitable and unworkable because of the dose rate coming from this pile of fuel. That means there will be no control of the other fuel pools, and we could lose control of them. Nuclear experts will soft sell the ramifications because that is how the industry works. When the experts have concerns about situation at number 4 reactor, that means they are pooping their pants. My experience at Fukushima was 30 years ago. I worked in the industry for 15 years as a health physics technician. I was also referred to as a nuclear gypsy because I traveled from plant to plant working outages. That meant I was always in the middle of the hottest jobs in the heart of the plant. The engineers will talk about their part of this part of the plant, whatever, but I have been to all those places wearing full gear. In late February of this year, it was reported that Japanese government considered evacuating the country's most populous city, Tokyo. And that story was actually from New York Times he links to. So that's enough of that, because I just wanted to mention this is what the WebBot report is saying, has already collected this data long before this was written. And this is jiving very well with that, even though there hasn't been evacuations yet. Keyword yet. Which also brings me on to an older WebBot keyword hit, major one, global coastal event leading to millions of people being evacuated, running to some part which originally said would be north of the 40-degree latitude. This global coastal event would be somewhere, or the fleeing would occur somewhere, not the global coastal event, the fleeing would occur at the 40-degree latitude or above the 40-degree latitude or something like that. And I said, man, the Japanese quake, tsunami, it had to be the global coastal event, but there were no evacuations. Damn, that's interesting, because if you look where Japan is, in that 40-degree latitude, oh my God, it's right there. Wow, but there were no evacuations. And they even said it would affect, because they get the decimal point wrong in the data all the time, they don't go with decimal points. So it could be 2 million people affected, 20 million people affected, or perhaps 200 million people. They weren't sure. Having said that, let me pick this paper back up. Where was it at? Because it was in this article. Somewhere it said something along the lines of 2 million people in the area in question would basically ultimately affect 2 million people. Old WebBot report, 2 million, 20 million, or 200 million, weren't sure. And the article states specifically for Japan, 2 million would be affected. At least to start with, I assume, or not. Maybe it's just 2 million. Old report. Global coastal event. Could have been Japan, but we didn't have the evacuation. A year later, looks like we might have the evacuation after all, which would fulfill the old data. Which also means, when I tell you to pay attention to what I say, but not the dates, that's why. Now, where was I? Additional note. On a personal level, again, I finished with him talking about people running away from religions, throwing them away. On a personal level, my thinking is that there are risks to being wrongly placed in the southern hemisphere. Because above that, it said people, wherever this evacuation happens, if it's Japan, they're going to be going south of the border, south of the equator. But he's saying, on a personal level, my thinking is that there are risks to being wrongly placed in the southern hemisphere, as any solar expulsion, CME, coronal mass ejection from the sun, etc., in December of 2012 through March of 2013 may be directed by the solar polar magnetic fields into that hemisphere. Perverse to the logic of the facing hemisphere of the planet, yes, but there is still some evidence to suggest that this may be more likely than not that the southern polarity will be the attracting focus for any solar expulsions. The issue for all is where precisely will be the southern magnetic pole near the end of this year. As had been noted in previous Shape of Things to Come reports, or WebBot reports, the toroid things on the Earth that we would start to see or hear about on Earth will be going walkabout, will be actually moving. Next thing, markets, global powers that be, populous US of A, and press entities. What about precious metals over 2012? And again, it might mean 2013. It might even mean 2014. All you need to know is what I'm telling you. And I'll tell you right now, keep stacking your gold and silver. And if the prices plummet big time, go in with both hands. Trust me. And let me elaborate. A very broad archetype that brings in all forms of uses, including monetary. We are concentrating on this latter, though note that there are many data items suggesting that upcoming or soon-to-be leaked energy devices will propel the demand for precious metals, namely silver, by the way. The data sets within both the populous entities and the markets entity for the precious metals, additional note, increasingly bound to rare earths now. In other words, precious metals will start to really be like really precious. He's assuming, not sure what he means by that. But the data sets within both the populous entities and the markets entity for the precious metals all include a primary support for a crisis in spring northern hemisphere, which we're still in. As this crisis is growing for May and late spring into near summer solstice, it seems safe to presume that the current, as of this writing, assaulting on pricing of precious metals is the crisis. So what we're seeing in the precious metals being slammed right now is the crisis he's speaking of, he thinks right here. If so, he says, then the data would indicate that in summer, northern hemisphere, the powers that be and their economic minions will be trying to force illness upon the price of precious metals via their Federal Reserve paper notes, and further to retain low prices through to fall the season, northern hemisphere this year. The data sets are quite clear in stating that this is an attempt that will have tremendous power behind it. Yet, it will fail, as hyperinflation will manifest, albeit in a strange form. Further, the data suggests that worn green US dollars are going to be at the center of a great struggle over the waning days and hours of spring northern hemisphere. The data sets clearly indicate that severe hardship will descend on dollar-based economies as summer starts. The data sets contain several bespoke references for a 3-month period in which this struggle with ignored illness within the system is denied vigorously, which is what we're seeing right now. Europe's fine, Greece is fine, Spain is fine. There's no bank runs going on over there. We don't know what you're talking about. The stock market's fine, even though JP Morgan lost, what, 20% over the last week or so? Everything's fine. No. The data sets are saying that nowhere will the shrill voices be more denying than on American TV, mainstream media. I'm not even going to be close to finishing this in the amount of time that I have, so I'll do a video now and then a second one, and then I will combine them later tonight when I get home. These data sets would seem to indicate something of a final frenzy of false patriotic fervor on the part of the propaganda whores of the mainstream media. There are sets going to frothing at the mouth and spewing guests/opposition with split and invective. The idea is that the linguistic tone of the mainstream media will become so rabid and so verbally abusive of any and all opposition or disruptions as to be lambasted by the planetary populace. The data reads as though the daily spew from the mainstream media is just so outrageously false that the ragers, video bloggers, or raggers, video bloggers, are waiting to pounce for the juicy bits for their parody video work, like on YouTube people like me will be doing. This situation seemingly sets up a feedback loop situation in which the mainstream media will be tortured internally as they recognize their own vulnerability to satire and ridicule and begin a rather strange form of self-censorship. This no-win media war, which he's calling it the indie versus mainstream media, or the citizen journalists, whatever, versus mainstream media, he's calling it indie, is indicated to last for over 3 weeks as the mainstream media wrestles with an appropriate response. The data further indicates that the sniping wars between the two, if you want to call it that, is somewhat curtailed by earth changes or terra intrusions, including a big eruption from a volcano, it appears, and a big rip or tear in the land. So keep an eye out for those things. At the end of the denial of illness systemic to monetary financial system period of 3 months, additional note, likely begins in very early June. A striking or shocking episode is showing as being disruptive to digital/paper debt markets. This shocking/striking episode is focused on three-way fish, he's calling it. The data is showing that fish will cause/initiate a rupture in the bowels of the monetary system. Additional note, anytime we get archetypes that contain bodily references, we pay very close attention, as these are prime archetypes within the system. Further references within the fishes subset show that global fisheries will be collapsing, and exceptionally poor and disgustingly mutated sets are at the primary level of support for the end of the denial of global illness. So people in denial will be brought out of denial rapidly and hurtfully, because it will be very apparent and, drastic for them, so it's going to be a little painful for them to deal with. Noting that there are repeated references for no fish and empty harvest and worn hands yield hunger, the data sets are explicitly stating, additional note, correct or not, that it will be empty oceans/bad fishes that will rupture the shell of denial about the systemic rot of the system, our system, the banking system, the financial system, the system. The stink of the fisheries is an important temporal marker. So that's an important event to figure out where we are on this timeline when that happens, for the precious metals, both as money and as a market, in that this is coincident with the transfer of precious metals from the private hands to the national interest. My note, reading this, could this be people who have gold/silver receipts at some bank or storage facility that are told, sorry about your luck, it's not here, it's gone? Just like the video I did 2 days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, guy went into he had an account with a Switzerland bank that is guaranteed to store his gold in an allocated account. It has to be there. Went there, I need the gold out of my allocated account. Sorry, it's not here. We'll have to get it. It's not here. You don't think that that's what this means, do you? That stuff has already been in previous Robot reports of just such a thing happening. If you don't have it in your possession, you don't have it. Additional note, as forecast in previous reports, Robot reports, the data has always maintained a stealth or taxation at the point of transfer form of precious metals confiscation. It is here this year, likely beginning in early July. This will be coincident with a major failure of the paper debt markets and the inception of a form of hyperinflation. The hyperinflation is described as being strange with layers and types and levels. The data sets are unclear, but may be describing a situation in which cross-border hyperinflation exists with multiple currencies simultaneously. Hyperinflation versus precious metal prices will be sick. The amount precious metals will be going to will probably be sick. And before, if there is some kind of confiscation, before that takes place, depending on where silver and gold's at, you may want to sell it all. If we're $200-300 silver, you may want to go ahead and just pull the trigger, sell it, go get your piece of land, go do whatever you want to do with it, and have a nice day. Could it go much higher than 300? Absolutely, it could, for sure. And the next thing, the data suggests that the reconciliation, and again, this whole confiscation, there's not enough people that, like you and me, out there that own gold and silver. So there would really be no real reason to take it from us. But it would be a real good reason if you had some in a safety deposit box, or maybe a JP Morgan security facility that's handling business for all the other banks that deal with gold and silver and companies that gold and silver. Do you know APMEX, the big gold and silver company, uses JP Morgan Chase as their bank? It would be real easy for JP Morgan to screw everybody that left it in their possession, and then you get written off. Here's your paper money back in exchange. I'm holding the real thing. This does not scare me into thinking there will be a confiscation. They're going to come get mine. If there is, and the price is $300, $400, $500, $600 an ounce, and they say we're taking gold and silver because it's throwing everything into chaos all of a sudden, we'll give you today's price for it, but you're going to give it up. Oh, I'll be there as fast as I can drive to give it to them. Confiscate it? Don't even use that word. I'm giving it to you for that $600 or for wherever the price is. $300, I'll take it. Now I can go to Tennessee and buy some serious land and property and build stuff on there and get my own little mini community going. Wouldn't that be great? The data suggests that the reconciliation to historic normal, 4,000 or 5,000 years of history, gold and silver ratio, 16 ounces to 1 ounce of gold. 16 ounces of silver, 1 ounce of gold. That's the ratio. And sometimes 20 to 1, somewhere around there. Currently, we're over 50 to 1 right now. I don't know off the top of my head. Somewhere high, over 50, 54, 55. So automatically, if that happened right now, silver would double. $28 silver would double to $56 right now. And it's saying, data suggests that the reconciliation back to historic normals of the silver to gold ratio will begin in July. Man, I hope it's this July. Please, Webbot God, or gods, or computer programs, please let it be accurate on this particular thing, more accurate than some of the other stuff that I had to wait a year or two to see. Although, if I have to wait till July of 2013, that's okay. I said this was coming. I've prepared people to wait years to unload their silver, not days or weeks or months. I said long term, so it's going to be at least several years. May not be 10 years. I don't think we'll go that long, but it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. That's what I've said from day one. Note that this will not be a good thing, he says. What? This will not be a good thing, as the data sets are indicating it occurs against the larger problems data sets of the, quote, economy at a global level, as is discussed below. Also note that in the opinion of this guy, Cliff High, half-past human, people would be seriously deranged, out of your flippin' mind, to trade any material object for paper currency or digital representations of that currency after mid-June of this year. And again, for God's sakes, because I know people, it's June, it's July, it didn't happen. What if it's next year? And again, if they didn't do this so many times and be right so many times and get the dates wrong a year or two later, I wouldn't be wasting my time telling you this over and over and over. But because I've seen it personally happen multiples of times, I have to keep giving you that little disclaimer. Take it with a grain of salt. Do what you want with it. I'm just going to read this. I know what I'm doing with it. I'm keeping my freaking silver, and I'm about to buy some more as they destroy the prices. As I just said, over the next 2 or 3 months, they are going to throw everything but the kitchen sink at dropping gold and silver. You sheeple, you get away from that. See, it's crashing. You've lost money on that. Get away from that. You don't touch it until it collapses, and then it skyrockets. You don't want to be getting out of it and getting that pit in your stomach that scares you into selling, because they know how you work. They know exactly how you work and how to make you feel and how to make you react. I can only imagine how many people have sold some of their gold and silver recently out of fear, not knowing where it's going to go next. And it may go down to $20 an ounce silver. What if it goes down to $15? Oh my God. It takes about $15 an ounce to get it out of the ground. So it can't possibly go to zero like a paper stock or currency can. Next. As the greater social contract with the officialdom/minions comes unglued due to the powers that be having corrupted the contract, social contract, centuries ago, there are indications that the people begin to construct with no craft or masons a new social order from the human to human level. This trend is indicated to arise as the social order and social arrangement with the oppressors, which is the powers that be and their official dominions, begins to become visibly disrupted. Some of the disruptions of the social contract are shown within the detail sets as including temporal markers for mild social violence / reproach that will include press whores or TV personalities who will be assaulted and or roughed up while at dinner and in transit. The data sets are indicating that food assaults against the TV press personalities will become so common as to create betting pools where which TV bozo will be spaghetti faced tonight, as well as to cause hiring of bodyguards. Them hiring bodyguards. This response on the part of the TV press personalities of hiring mercenaries will end up late in summer, causing yet another level of escalation as a TV press whore and his or her cadre of mercenaries will incite a riot that is indicated as involving a downtown core area and producing widespread destruction, as well as breaking bones of all parties concerned / involved. Additional note, much of these details point to early July, by the way, he says. Additional details within the collapsing social contract subset include a description of a member of the powers that be who will be driving with a minion, and they will reach the end of a long and dangerous journey, risk of being found out or seen, when just as they start to relax their caution, their vehicle, car / limo will hit and maim / kill someone right at the secret driveway / entrance wherever they were going. Understandably, this causes much consternation and results in an incident in which the minion and his / her boss are outed / discovered, and the plot, whatever it involves, comes undone in a rather spectacular fashion. Man, that's a little temporal marker, or not really a temporal marker, but that's a marker I can't wait to see. These are related details for the disruption / destruction of the imposed social contract. Show incidents that will become visible in which minions and officialdom, and in at least 3 cases the powers that be, will mysteriously be killed. In these instances, the data suggests paid turncoats or bribed minions will be the responsible agent or agents. The data set seem to be suggesting that some members of the power that be will use this period of upcoming induced chaos as cover to settle old scores. These powers that be are not nice people and have a long history of screwing over not only the general populace of humans, but also each other, as noted. It would seem that the data is forecasting a period after the powers that be have won the first round and arrested tens of thousands illegally, that the breakdown of the social contract that the powers that be have imposed through deceit and force is broken down enough that it no longer causes hesitation in the minds of the populace. The detail sets provide hints of a few instances where the powers that be and their bodyguard cadres are reduced to pink slime by pissed off locals when universe provides opportunities. Note that in one of these instances, likely the one we can tag as Southern, a cache or satchel of powerful materials will be taken by the locals. These contents will later be disseminated, and they will be truly disgusting to all humans. These contents of revulsion are indicated to have something of a long-term role in the continuing readjustment of the relationship between humanity and all other MFers, bad word, including the powers that be. Of course, the enraging center of the social contract breakdown is the Federal Reserve cabal system, which will be essentially destroyed over the course of summer, Northern Hemisphere, such by the time that the elections in the USA are reached, the Federal Reserve criminals are no longer safe in public and are described as prisoners of their bodyguard cadres. after the many public direct actions against the Federal Reserve cabal members, including the widespread planetary dissemination of the wanted posters of the cabal members, the data suggests that extraordinary dictatorial regime codes, or EOs, will be brought into place, making it a crime to have or possess or distribute any pictures of any official dominion. If you post a wanted poster of Ben Bernanke, you can get in big trouble, is what this is saying. This is a very large temporal marker. So when you see these things unfolding, people putting up wanted posters of minions, we ought to know roughly where we are in this timeline. This is a very large temporal marker, as it is indicated to occur near the point that the government/officialdom will seize, probably quasi-legally, all of the media not currently under their control. Much of the impetus for the media seizure will come from the rioting and inter-urban battles of summer Northern Hemisphere. The moves to complete control, and he laughs, ha 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 ha, of the media, not only mainstream, will be begun during the governmental/officialdom retreating action in late July or early August. This will be as officialdom is trying to alibi the unexplainable deaths of the children/young people. And I think of that event that happened in 1970 something, where the National Guard shot on some protesters. You remember that? And I think he might be referring to a bigger event, kind of like that, and then them saying, well, how did these protester, young kids, college kids, how did they die? And now they have to come up with an alibi, which of course just makes things get more out of control and get worse. Additional note, about 1/3 of the data is involved with dead protesters, and 1/3 is ambiguous, but the last third contains radiation as an associated keyword. As model space has progressed through June and into July, and as a matter of fact, I mean, hearing all this and more than I'm going to read you, I've got to go, so I'm going to read you this last paragraph and then I got to go. My brain is telling me right now there's no way all this will happen in a matter of a month, 2 months, 3 months, which may support older webbot versions where it comes later, another year, or maybe some of what it says happens in July, but then another part of it is next July and it's worse, or something like that. It's just a lot that is coming in a matter of months that I just, my own inner whatever is telling me it can't possibly happen that fast. However, man, there's been a lot of stuff that has happened pretty damn quick here recently, if you know what I mean. As model space has progressed through June and into July, the economic chaos shifts over to active destruction/breakdown of many national systems. The data sets under this descriptor include electrical service, healthcare, just-in-time delivery systems. First one, electrical service. Interesting. As well as many of the monetary sharing arrangements nationally. Additional note, data suggest a total breakdown over a couple of months of the states to federal government sharing deals. So between the states and the federal government, something's going to break down regarding money and sharing deals, or money something. As the planetary dollar-based economy unravels in June and July, the natural response to the rapidly shifting conditions within the North American continent is indicated indicated to cause several visible changes. The borders of the USA are indicated to be virtually closed, but curiously, not by the USA officialdom, but rather by Canada and Mexico. We don't want you poor saps leaving your country and coming into ours. It was nice when you guys were number one and we all went across the border and got jobs and everything, but now it sucks. We're leaving, and if any of you Americans want to leave your country, you know the old saying, well, if you don't like things here, just leave. And then you're going to see people trying to leave, and oh, Mexico won't let us in. Oh, Canada won't let us in either. You're stuck there, you Americans. That's what this is saying. In both cases, it is to stop a flood of economic and political refugees. Many data details suggest that some spectacular stories will emerge that will be negatively pimped by the mainstream propaganda media. The idea coming across is that the TSA will attempt to take over all transportation and border functions by late 2012, but along the way will be making news for the mainstream propaganda media as they will adopt the IRS, Internal Revenue System, approach to terrorizing stories to enforce compliance. The data indicates that pictures of fleeing families found raped, mutilated, robbed will be used by the media and TSA on purpose to control cross-border flight or leaving across the borders. Of course, the data indicates that these will be officialdom prompted and created incidents, completely fake. And it mentioned that one of these things, or generally, what was the one? What did it say? Basically, they're going to create stories and say, "Hey, hey, you guys want to leave the country? You want to go to Mexico? You want to go to Canada? Let's see what's happening here." And then they show stories and pictures and photographs, things like that, of people who tried the same thing. And this woman got raped and her kid got killed and stole everything she had. Here's a picture of her, what's left of her. Oh, I don't want to leave the country now. And it will be found out a little bit later that, hey, wait a minute, that picture they showed of these people fleeing that said that they were just killed, they weren't in Mexico, they were protesting down in Washington, D.C., or they were protesting in Chicago at the NATO summit. That's a picture of them running from the police. That's not even down in freaking Mexico. And they get called out on it. And then, of course, they have to try to cover it. I didn't actually write that down, but I just remembered it. Nope, not gonna make the light. So anyways, let me just see how many pages I got left here. Basically, I think I read 4, and I've got 6 to go, because I think I got 10 pages total. So I think I got like 6 pages to go, and I'll do that after I'm done with this little thing I gotta do today, or after work. Make my little note, start here, and continue. And I'll let my camera charge while I'm inside doing whatever I've got to do, so that I can just finish. I may just get back in my car and finish it in the car and then go home. So for now, this is part 1, and get ready for part 2.